The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
Farmers face lots of different stresses. One of the biggest stresses that is really going to be a challenge for them in the future is climate change. We're talking about utilizing this solar and this technology as a climate mitigation strategy for farmers to address things that are, particularly right now, for example, in the West.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
We're here at the Solar Farm Summit, and my guest today is Chuck Schwartz. He is the head of business development for a company called Sun Agri, which has developed a software platform for agrivoltaics. And they are bringing a wealth of knowledge and data from the European market to the US now. So I'm very excited to talk to you, Chuck. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Tim, for seeing me. Appreciate it.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to Sun Agri.
Okay, great. So I'm an engineer by trade and an entrepreneur. Been involved in different businesses over the years. About 15 years ago, I started to focus almost exclusively on energy-related issues. Ran programs for NYSERDA, New York State Energy Research Development Authority. Ran a program for energy efficiency in the New York market called the Long Island Green Homes Program. I'm a little ADHD, so I need to kind of get involved in different things at different times. So 6 years ago, started to work pretty exclusively on commercial and industrial solar, mostly in the New York market, rooftop, carports, some ground mount. And that's kind of morphed into additional projects more in New York State, in the upstate market, and got involved with researchers at Cornell University. They have a laboratory in the Hudson Valley, which is working on apples and vineyards and things like that. They asked me to find technology for agrivoltaics for them to include in a research grant that they were putting together that got funded, by the way. And I got to know these folks in France from Sun Agri, who are really leaders in this space in Europe. And over time, they asked me to get involved with them for business development in the U.S.
So as my listeners may know, the European market is about 10 years ahead of us here in the U.S. when it comes to agrivoltaics and in general, right, solar technology. So I'm not surprised that you found your way to a European company, but what is the crux of Sun Agri's offering in the U.S. market?
Okay, so what we've found is that I'll call it intelligent steering of solar panels, so typically single-axis tilt panels, can not only produce lots of solar power in kilowatt hours, but at the same time provide an environment that's actually conducive to plant growth, that can actually improve plant growth. And part of that is from shading. It's really more from what we basically are doing is we're taking a variety of different inputs. We have sensors in fields, we have a weather station, we have a crop plan, we have all kinds of different information, and we're turning that all together and delivering on a real-time basis a tilt management plan that will tilt the panels at different directions at different times to improve both the crop growth and address heat stress, for example, address frost, for example, and at the same time produce a significant amount of power.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some trade-offs here that are complicated, right? When plants are exposed to sunlight, they're photosynthesizing. But to do that, right, they have to open their stomata, these little openings in their leaves, to absorb CO2, which is their main building block, right? They want to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere using photonic power. But at the same time, then, they're breathing out H2O, right? And so if they're under too much sunlight and water stress, right, then they're going to shut down their photosynthesis and they're not going to grow as much.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, then you're putting a solar array over the plants, which really does have an optimal track. Any single axis tracker will generally be following the sun. There are some nuances, right?
Of course.
If there's clouds, if there's weather. And now you're putting this all together, and the question is, how do you optimize energy and crop production, and which has greater monetary value to the agrivoltaic solar farmer?
Okay. So you're raising the real questions that are the challenges, particularly in the U.S. market. It's a little different in Europe. So first thing is, at the end of the day, we call it agricultural production offset or curtailment. At the end of the day, there's only so much sun, there's almost only so much time during the day. If I'm going to be placing those panels to optimize to optimize sunlight coming in, say, in the morning, that is very likely a time that I'm not going to be tracking the sun very well for solar production. Now, I'll get some, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking about bifacial panels, we're talking about, optimizer technologies for the inverters and things. So you're going to get some power, but you're not going to get as much as if you were just tracking the sun.
Right.
On average, we're seeing probably a 25% curtailment in the KWH production from these types of systems.
Okay. And that's because it's prioritizing the growth of the crops.
Exactly. We're farmer first.
Okay. And I get that. Because what's the point in growing a crop if it's not going to be a good crop, right?
Well, even more important, Tim, farmers face lots of different stresses. One of the biggest stresses that is really going to be a challenge for them in the future is climate change. We're talking about utilizing this solar and this technology as a climate mitigation strategy for farmers to address things that are, particularly right now, for example, in the West. I mean, we're starting a project in Palisades, Colorado, over peaches.
Okay.
And I mean, thank God they have the Colorado rivers right there, so they have plenty of water. But they get a couple, an inch, 2 inches of rain a year. I mean, it's really it's significant, and they have lots of potential for sunburn on plants, things like that.
Yeah.
So by doing this, we're able to help them mitigate this drought strategy, this drought condition, and at the same time, in this case, this project we're doing with it's called Talbot Farms, is going to be they have a pretty big operation, so it's going to be net metering to their system. It's about a 420 kW system.
Okay.
But the same thing could work on a larger scale. Now, it's not going to work on utility scale. And the reason is I've got to raise the panels higher than traditionally I'm going to raise them. It could be as much as 5 meters in height.
Right. So the structure gets very expensive.
It adds a capex to the project.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, and money talks. Many people come to me and say, hey, I've got this great whiz-bang technology. And I'm like, okay, well, why isn't anybody using it? I had several conversations yesterday with double-axis tracker manufacturers. And I'm like, well, look, 96% of the market in utility solar in the U.S. is single-axis tracker.
Of course.
5 foot tall. You want to go 10 feet, 15 feet, you can do it, but that's a lot of steel.
Absolutely.
But are you also assisting with doing that financial analysis of what the capex is going to be versus the return on that investment?
Exactly. So in Europe, SunAgri is an IPP. They're building systems. They're developing. They're bringing partnerships. They're part of a large construction company.
Okay.
And they're doing it. In the U.S., what we're looking to do is to partner with developers who are looking to differentiate themselves in agrivoltaics and to offer this as a...
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. The blue waves and the light stars of the
people like that
agrivoltaics world.
Exactly.
We witnessed an interesting announcement yesterday. They're starting a new association, the Solar and Farming Association, Safa they call it.
Yep, very familiar. I know Lucy quite well.
Which is going to be an analog to SEIA and CCSA focused on agrivoltaics. So it's a very exciting time in agrivoltaics in the U.S. It's kind of starting to bubble up now, and more developers are realizing that if they can offer an agrivoltaic solution to landowners and the neighbors of landowners, the likelihood of getting the projects permitted goes up. So they can get the projects permitted faster, cheaper, and with a greater success rate. And this is everything to developers. There's a lot of dead ends in development, right? 90% of projects never see the light of day, because they get shut down for various and sundry reasons. It could be the interconnection costs, could be NIMBYism, et cetera. So back to SunAgri.
Right.
You've got a pilot, I would call it, I guess, in Colorado.
We have
it's underway.
We have 5 projects that are under development right now.
Okay.
3 of them are at research universities.
Okay.
And then 2 of them are commercial.
And what are those research universities?
Cornell University is in a development stage right now, Washington State University, and Southern Illinois University.
Oh, great. My backyard.
Oh, I'll come visit. But if we could.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that economic conversation, okay?
Please.
Because we've got to look beyond the standard way of doing things. Look, the standard way of doing a solar farm, and I have trouble with that terminology, by the way. The standard way of doing a solar farm is it's a zero-sum game. I'm going to lease the land as cheap as possible. I'm going to build as inexpensively as possible. My O&M, I'm going to try to make it low as possible, and I'm going to see maximum returns.
Yeah.
That's the traditional way of doing it, and that's part of, I think, the reason you're seeing. I've seen less than 20% of projects that's the numbers I saw from my research. But some of that
less than 20% of projects
are successfully built.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Less than 10 probably.
I think my number was with interconnection, where they've already input money for the interconnection.
Yeah.
It still fell apart. And the other big number is it's like 6 years to get a project done.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about 50 megawatt projects. I'm talking about community solar, 3 megawatt, 5 megawatt in New York.
Yeah.
That's not a good return. So what we've got to start doing is looking at what are the other economic inputs to the equation that have value. And the challenge is they may not be really beneficial to the developer or the investor, but they could be really important to the farmer. Things like, so I'll give you an example. You're familiar with VEDR in New York?
Yeah.
Okay, so VEDR has these 5 different attributes. I forgot what they call them. One of them is an environmental attribute. So the environmental attribute is basically a REC value, a renewable energy credit value.
Yep.
But if I'm farming under solar, why, at the same time I'm producing meaningful kilowatt hours, I'm also sequestering carbon in my plants.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't my REC value, my environmental benefit go up? That would change the kinds of numbers that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But that also, now we start getting into the what's really agrivoltaics versus not agrivoltaics conversation, which could be tricky.
Yeah, a definition is slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I had a lengthy conversation about this, about the New Jersey market, for example, where if you want to do greenfield solar development, you have to do dual use solar.
Wait,
Right? You can't convert farm ground to solar farms without doing agrivoltaics. And then the question I asked is, well, can you do grazing? Can you do solar grazing with sheep and get away with it? And there was a maybe. But really, what they want to see is, what is the traditional use today? There will be the same traditional use tomorrow, adding solar on top. And what you're suggesting is, hey, Mr. Solar Developer, Mr. Farmer, you can now do this and get more yield out of your crops than you were before you added solar.
or protect them from
Or protect them from climate change. And let's just write some of what those assumptions are. More heat waves, more drought, can be more flooding also.
Frost. New York lost half its apple crop 2 years ago because of a late season frost. It was
Okay.
You had a warm January, trees started budding, and then come April, late April, early May, cold snap.
Right.
You know, they had already started fruiting some of the trees.
Yeah.
And it totally wiped out a big portion of the.
Okay.
And so.
And you think that you might be able to control frost damage with?
We've shown it. And the panels would be placed in a horizontal position.
Right.
And would act as a heat reflector.
Yeah.
And look, it's not going to be a dramatic increase in temperature, but 2 degrees, 3 degrees Celsius is probably enough to address that. And it's not that much different than the other mitigation strategies that farmers are doing to deal with crop. I mean, they're blowing air with those big giant fans, and they're spraying down with water. This is just, another way that, and it's part of a larger system often.
Yeah, I know in wine country in California, they use big fans to mitigate the risk of frost.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so back to this peach farm though in Colorado. Tell us a little bit about the considerations, and is the farmer going to own the system?
Yes. They've received a grant from USDA, a Rural Energy for America grant.
Yeah. I mean, these incentives are very important, right? When you have a nascent industry, which I would certainly call agrivoltaics a nascent industry, you need incentives to get farmers to take that step, or developers for that matter, right?
Right.
It's a both and. So what is the reception that you're getting from developers, right? Because you're wanting to plug your software into existing hardware systems.
Exactly.
And it's an upgrade, right, to that system, because today it's a tracker, tomorrow it's a smart tracker or an intelligent tracker.
Yep.
That's designed with crop growing in mind.
Yes.
But what is the reception that you're getting?
Depends on who you're talking to be quite honest. There's, well, first of all, just in terms of the tracker technologies, our goal is to be hardware agnostic. At the end of the day, hooking into the control systems for different trackers is not a major technology lift. It's really that all of these systems have some type of mechanism for us to make a data interface to their control systems.
Sure.
And it's going to vary based on the different manufacturer.
Okay.
In terms of developers, there are some developers, you named 2 of them, that believe that agrivoltaics is going to be an important part of their offering and their differentiation in the marketplace. And also, I think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And we're looking to build relationships and channel partnerships with folks like that are looking to do it. At the same time, I believe that farmer-owned systems have a place in this market. I'm a great believer in distributed energy resources. Look, I worked in New York City for years doing rooftop.
Okay.
It's all distributed energy.
Yeah.
And why not? We've got to change some rules, though. A lot of counties, for example, in the Northeast, have rules that say if you produce power on your farm, you can only produce up to 110% of your own use. Well,
Sure.
that means they can't do community solar. That means that they can't do virtual net metering. There's a lot of things that doesn't make sense. So those kinds of jurisdictional rules have to change in my eyes.
With regards to net metering, it's only going the other direction. Net metering is being devalued across the
Exactly,
country.
I know.
So we're going through that in Illinois. Obviously, the California market went through that
Oh, yeah.
last year, and it crushed the residential solar market. I think the market was 70% reduced
That's some numbers I saw too.
this year versus last, right? Because of NEM 3.0.
Yep.
So big delta. All right, well, what else should we know about Sun Agri, and who is your primary audience? Who are you trying to spark dialogue with?
All right, well, my goal right now is to build a few very key demonstration projects.
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, this is about farmers being able to look at these systems and understand them and say, this makes sense for me, for my own operations. Whether they own it, whether it's owned by a developer and they're a tenant farmer, or there's a lot of different potential models for that. So my goal is to get a number of these geographically situated in the next 2 years.
Have you talked to the University of Illinois? Because they have that Solar Farm 2 project.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking to them. I was introduced to them.
I mean, it's traditional trackers. To my knowledge, they may have one elevated portion with a taller tracker. I'm not sure of all those details, but
Look, at the end of the day, the height is based on two things. It's based on what you're growing underneath.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're growing blueberries,
right.
you don't need 15 feet.
Yeah.
The other, of course, is the farm equipment.
Right.
And I believe that we're seeing, over time, we're going to see smaller equipment. The other thing, too, that we're going to see is I think that a lot of this fits into the regenerative agriculture, organics type of marketplace, which are a lot of times are smaller farms. They're not going to have big, giant equipment. In a lot of cases, they're going to be using, Troy builds. And,
Using what?
They're not going to have plows. They're going to have other types of smaller hand-driven equipment.
Okay.
And so they're not going to need that same height.
Yeah. Okay. And what is the reception that you're getting from the hardware manufacturers?
You're saying the tracker?
Yeah, the tracker manufacturers.
If we were talking about last year, I went to RE.
Sure,
Trade show.
RE Plus.
Yeah, and I specifically went to try to start this dialogue, and they looked at me like I was crazy. But now, look, I mean, we're in who's right there? Next Tracker.
Yeah.
They're getting it. They understand there's a place in this market. Look, it's not going to be the same place as giant utility scale, but there's a place in this market for them to make some good money.
Yeah.
And so they're.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Next Tracker only wants to sell 50 megawatt projects and up.
My conversations with them is that they've reconsidered that.
Okay.
And they're looking at this market as an add-on market. It's not going to be the same dollars, but it's going to be significant dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be more the niche players. I mean, we see there's half a dozen tracker manufacturers here.
And last year there was only one.
And names that I was not familiar with. So
yeah,
it is and they're coming from Europe, they're coming from the Middle East, those places where agrivoltaics has already gotten a toehold. Asia is another place, although I don't know. We had there's a Korean axis tracker maker.
They have a single axis also.
Yeah.
They have both.
Yep. All right. Anything else you'd like us to know, Chuck?
No, just that, what I see is we're going to see an evolution in this marketplace. And
for sure,
there's going to be different portions of it with different, and we need to kind of segregate the types of systems that we do, and if we're going to incentivize, as an example. So, is it really the same if I put in vertical systems? It's great. We're going to continue to farm in between, but is it benefiting the plant growth?
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that I think we have to watch, and I think we also really need to look at the economics of these solar projects over agriculture and look for other monetary areas. Because at the end of the day, the value of that, forgetting the value of the electrons, forgetting the value of the crops, put it all together, the value per acre from a production standpoint with solar and farming is significantly higher than one or the other alone.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Great.
Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please give us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. And reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. I want to thank Chuck Schwartz with Sun Agri for being here today. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Tim, great seeing you.
Let's grow solar.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.